be the time.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to PubKey. We got coin-based tonight. This is going to get a little bit nerdier than the other ones, just how we like it. So we have Arbed Out, Drew Armstrong, myself, Thomas, joined by Antoine. Antoine. We'll just leave it at that. You know I don't speak French. Tonight we're going to be talking about the latest flame wars that have been happening for a little while. We thought that they would be closed off by the time we got to this one after the conferences and everything, but they're continuing to a certain degree, and I think it's a complicated issue. It seems like OpReturn has been blamed for a lot of the conflict here. That seems like it's a little bit of a misdirection, and we're going to dive into everything. I'm going to be roaming with a microphone. If anybody has any questions, as always, it's a tavern chat. If we use a term of art, a technical term of art, or you want to double click into something. Are you guys here for the event? For this event? The Bitcoin event? Okay, cool. So if we use a technical term of art that you don't quite understand, raise your hand. Feel free to ask a question. If you want us to double click into a particular issue, just ask us to do so, and we'll slow down and focus on that for a little bit. Let's take it away.
You are on so much Adderall right now. I cannot believe.
It's good that the mic didn't pick that one up. I think he's got about a dozen Lucy's in the upper deck right now. Do we have Mr. Kingsley now?
Yeah, maybe it's better that everybody didn't hear that. How you doing, Tommy?
Hi.
All right. Due to circumstances beyond our control, Thomas Paccia will be joining us tonight. My condolences. Like Tommy said, we're going to be talking about what everyone's been talking about the past couple of weeks on Twitter for inexplicable reasons, OpReturn and Bitcoin statelessness rules. Joining us tonight is Antoine Poinsot, a Bitcoin Core developer, and Drew Armstrong. First off, before we dive into it, does everyone know what we're talking about when we mention OpReturn and the filters and all that? Are you all generally aware of what this fight has been about on the past month or so on Twitter? Anybody not know? Raise your hand. I promise you won't look sillier than Tommy does in that hat. Go ahead. Anyone? You know, all right. Oh, sure, TLDR. All right, you know what? That's a great tee up. Antoine, you want to give him a too long didn't read version of what we're talking about right now? Break it down slow.
There is a lot about OpReturn specifically, or about the drama on Twitter.
Should we start with what OpReturn is and then go into the genre on Twitter? And my job again is to be the single-digit IQ interlocutor to kind of help with any other fellow smooth brains out there. But yeah, maybe we start with OpReturn and then we can kind of go into the genesis of this drama.
Yeah, OpReturn is so in Bitcoin you send coins by locking them with a script, and OpReturn is just op means operation in a script, returns means fails the script immediately. So it's a type of script that is going to fail execution immediately, so it's provably unspendable. So when you send coins with this script, they're burned forever. It has the advantage that if it's burned forever, full nodes do not have to keep them in state, so you can discard them. So we call that pruning them. And it was standardized back in 2013, I think, because some people were using scripts in transaction output to store data. And they were using them in scripts that were not provably unspendable. And there was no other way that was standard, which means that standalone transaction would be relayed on the peer-to-peer network. If you could use very large script, the maximum size of a valid script can be arbitrarily large, but by execution it's 10,000 bytes. But those, you would not get your transaction relayed on a peer-to-peer network if you use those. So, but you could use addresses, like regular addresses. But for those addresses, full nodes do not know whether they're unspendable or not. Therefore, they have to keep them in state forever. And if they're unspendable, it means that they will truly have to spend them to keep them in state forever. Every single participant, full participant in the Bitcoin network, will have to keep them in state forever. And people on the network were using these addresses to store small amounts of data. In output that we knew as a human, if you go and look at how these protocols worked, they were unspendable. But a full node objectively couldn't look at the output and say, oh, it's unspendable. Therefore, it had to carry the state. Therefore, Bitcoin Core developers responded to this by standardizing a new type of script, which was the one with the up return, which is, it's always going to fail. Therefore, you know that when you see it, you do not have to carry it in your state. You can just drop it. By standardizing it, it did not incentivize people that were using Bitcoin as data storage to use this type instead, but it was harm reduction, basically. It was providing an alternative mean that is less harmful. It's not cheaper, but it's equally expensive, and it's less harmful. So a lot of the protocols moved to using it because they were not interested in doing harm. They were just interested in publishing data on the chain for whatever reason. Not always the best reason, but...
Okay, so where to begin unpacking that? Do you want to ask a question before we try to... No? Okay. Drew, do you need me to explain that to you?
Well, if I can attempt maybe to talk about like the op return. So in Bitcoin there are in Bitcoin scripting language, like a Bitcoin transaction basically consists of or can consist of sort of a script where you have a stack, or sorry, script is the language, but basically you have a stack and there are a variety of different operators that you can include on the stack. I believe is this correct? And then the op return is basically, as Antoine said, is a way to store arbitrary data that is basically not really calculated, or no operation is actually done when a node is verifying a Bitcoin transaction. It just sees the op return and then passes on, correct?
Exactly. You make me realize I didn't explain why using the up return, because it's probably unspendable, and how they use it is that they basically shove some data after the return. So that full nodes that validate the script are going to see the return and not execute the rest because they know that the script is invalid anyways. So the only thing that it's doing is storing data in the blockchain.
Okay, hang on a second, because I'm already seeing some mystified faces. Raise your hand if you know what Bitcoin script is and what Bitcoin script does. Cool, one hand. All right, so let's launch into that. Let's say I want to send coins to Isaac. What I'm actually doing is locking up my coins using a pretty standard, what we call script, which is a different set of instructions. That basically, those instructions translate to only the owner of Isaac's private key gets to sign over my coins to Isaac. Most transactions that we send on the Bitcoin network follow a pretty standard set of scripts, because there's only a few different ways to set up economic transactions. The one I just laid out from me to Isaac is probably the one that most of us use most of the time. I lock coins up, Isaac unlocks them. If you want to get fancy, you could do I lock coins up, and after a set time period, Isaac unlocks them. That uses another, what we call script opcodes. Each of those opcodes is a different instruction. You chain together these instructions for an unlocking script. So what is op return? Op return is an opcode in script that does nothing. There's no way to execute it. It doesn't actually do anything useful. Why would you do that? Well, let's say for whatever reason you wanted to embed data into a transaction. One way you could do it would be, actually there's a bunch of silly ways you could do it. You could make up a bunch of different nonsense public and private keys that matched data patterns and say, actually my data is in these public and private keys. So you'd have a bunch of bloat and nonsense in the blockchain, because these keys aren't actually keys, they're data. Everyone would have to carry around these keys. That's really undesirable. Another way you could do it would be to, actually, if you really want to get weird, I could send Isaac, say, 4 digits worth of sats back and forth, 1111, 10001, 1001, and I could like do ASCII back and forth to you over and over and over and over and over. You could impute meaning in those transactions. You can keep imagining different ways people can sort of try to sneak data into what should be a monetary transaction. Realizing this back in, it was 2013, I think, Counterparty was the first company that tried to build a business model on top of embedding arbitrary data into Bitcoin transactions. Satoshi, realizing this, said, okay, maybe we should, wasn't Satoshi that did the...
It wasn't Satoshi.
Who pushed in 2013?
Public enemy number one.
I'm not going to name names.
Peter Todd.
Oh, man. All right, it was Peter Todd's PR, yeah. The OpReturn opcode was added to scripts.
That's the same person, though.
We're not doing that one tonight, man. That's the next meeting. Oh man, you already derailed me. We're not even. It's not even 7 p.m. I haven't had my first drink and I'm already off the rails.
That was too easy.
All right, so OpReturn was added with the hope that, okay, if people are going to embed arbitrary data into the blockchain, here's a safe way to do it that we don't have to store this bloat in the UTXO set. We don't have to worry about random keys encoding data. Go ahead.
You said OpReturn was enabled to allow people to store data in the blockchain.
You're right, that's a poor way of phrasing it.
It was always possible to embed data into blockchain. It was just that if you want to embed data in the blockchain and benefit from the peer-to-peer relay of unconfirmed transactions, you had to respect a certain format, which is the format that he described before. And they were using this format, which is particularly harmful. There is other ways that don't respect this format that could be much less harmful. But some way of respecting this format is actually very harmful. So it was standardized. But let's say it was only a Bitcoin core modification and not a Bitcoin modification. It was always possible in Bitcoin since the beginning. It was only modified for Bitcoin core to relay it.
And here we refer to Bitcoin as sort of the core protocol consensus rules, whereas Bitcoin Core is just the predominant implementation of Bitcoin. Correct?
Yes.
All right, so does everybody know what script is and have a vague idea of what OpReturn is now and why we're talking about it? Proceed.
So then I think if we have those table stakes and those prerequisites filled, the next topic really is sort of why we're here today, which is some of the drama that unfolded in the last month, would we say?
Do you want me? I'll jump in. Yeah, because we just skipped over a decade of history.
Oh well, we can go back to the decade of history if we like.
We'll do it in like 10 seconds. There was a nice Cold War of. There's always been this sort of difference of opinion between people who think OpReturn is really neat and embedding data in the Bitcoin blockchain is super awesome, and people who, if you want to, I wouldn't go so far as to say monetary purists, but people who want to use Bitcoin for monetary transactions and think that should be the focus of it. And this uneasy sort of piece has lingered for about a decade, let's say. I know I'm simplifying. There have been changes to the OpReturn limit. Firstly, we allowed 40 bytes. Then it was 80 bytes of OpReturn. You want to jump in? Go ahead.
I think the differentiation is not between people that believe Bitcoin should be used for money or for embedding data. The differentiation is between people that believe that Bitcoin is interesting because it's aligning incentive between distrusting participants and people that believe Bitcoin is interesting because some loosely defined collective can enforce arbitrary rules on some participants.
I don't disagree. I don't have a dog in this fight. I'm not embedding anything in OpReturn data.
Yeah, me neither. Unlike what some people think.
And yet you're here. Oh my God. So the status quo sort of existed up until when do we want to say inscriptions is when things started to change?
Well, you had stamps as well.
All right. So
yes, so maybe it's interesting. Some people were like, oh, there is this alternative that is less harmful. But Bitcoin itself, the consensus rules, do not prevent me from actually doing harmful stuff. So what about I do this harmful stuff? And
I think there's a switch.
He doesn't view it as harmful. He views it like that he could you can't prune it out of the chain. And art, if it's real art, you shouldn't be able to prune it. It should be there forever. Mike in Space. This is
Wait,
Mike in Space.
who's he? Who's the
Mike in Space. He's the guy that started
Stamps
stamps.
protocol. All right,
Yeah.
hang on. If we're gonna do stamps and inscriptions, back up to. Okay, let's go to Taproot is activated. We've been using Operturn. People have been using it in different ways up until the Taproot activation. Now
Segwit.
there's
Segwit more, because Segwit introduces a witness discount, so which makes it 4 times cheaper to spend an output than to create it, which kind of realigns the incentive, because creating outputs imposes negative externalities on every single full users of the network, whereas spending them relieves is kind of a positive externality. So we wanted to incentivize people from spending outputs more than creating them. But
All right, so there's a new set of incentives after Segwit is activated for people who might be interested in embedding arbitrary data in the Bitcoin blockchain, right?
yeah, because it makes it easy. Makes it 4 times less expensive to spend an output, but also 4 times less expensive to store arbitrary data.
All right. Despite this new set of incentives, it wasn't particularly popular to adopt this new way of embedding arbitrary data into the Bitcoin blockchain.
Could have been.
All right. Fast forward to, let's say, what is it, 2022, 2023? Are we at inscriptions yet? Have we gotten there?
Well, I think we're now getting to inscriptions, which I think, raise your hand if you've heard of inscriptions in the room. So I guess maybe to summarize again in my room temperature IQ way, basically what we've kind of discussed here is that since time immemorial, or really since the start of Bitcoin, people have been finding ways to store arbitrary data in Bitcoin transactions on the Bitcoin blockchain. There was, we've talked about some of these implementations. We talked about the key impact of Segwit when that was implemented, how that changed some of the incentives, how it changed ways that you could inscribe arbitrary data. But I think really, someone who only got into this in 2017 because of my room temp IQ, what you basically have is like inscriptions really is when this kind of, I think, is most recently been quite relevant because folks were putting NFTs effectively in the Bitcoin blockchain. And so when inscriptions was only made possible, again, through Segwit, and I think as you're also about to describe, Mr. Kingsley, that it was inscriptions and then Taproot, Segwit and then Taproot together that really made inscriptions possible, which is when we started seeing a ton of mempool bloat and a ton of non-monetary transactions used in Bitcoin for these NFTs, correct?
Taking up to Antoine.
More than the technical innovation in Bitcoin that made it possible, it's really the social aspect of one guy realizing he can create a meme of, oh, you can actually store your NFTs from Ethereum, which had tons of usage and was very expensive to use. So what they were storing on Ethereum is actually a link to a website with their JPEG. And like Bitcoin, very little people use it. So it's very inexpensive. So what about we just store the actual JPEGs on-chain on Bitcoin? It could have been done before. It arguably was made slightly easier with Taproot, but not that much. It was like kind of incentivized with Segwit. It was made cheaper with Segwit and marginally easier with Taproot, but it could have happened before. So it's really the social aspect of a guy creating a meme, the meme becoming popular, and you just bootstrapped a use case and economic them in 4 block space.
All right, and go ahead, Frank. Yeah.
Two questions. One, I don't know if we could touch on colored coins at all. I don't know how that worked, but that was sort of early NFTs on Bitcoin. I think that might be some context here that might be helpful. I don't even know when that was, 2011 or 12 or something, or if it was later. And then two, if you don't mind, the first inscription ever on Bitcoin was in the Genesis block. Satoshi inscribing Chancellor on the brink of bail. Yeah. So how was that done as well? I don't know. Was that in the Coinbase or where was that as well? We could jump in either one first.
You want me to take those or? Okay. Colored coins were way back in, I forgot the first colored coin implementation. It was before Counterparty. I want to say Collio, actually, Udi's first company. But I'm sure there was someone else before that. There's the idea of if a UTXO undergoes a certain operation, maybe you send a coin to an address or from an address or you taint a coin in a certain way, you can call that coin colored. And once that coin has undergone a certain operation, you can say these coins now obey certain rules. And as long as you and I buy into that sort of meta understanding of what these coins now do, we have a colored coin protocol between us. We could say, well, all these coins were sent from this address, and so they have magic properties. They mean something to you and me. No one else will care about it that's just following the rules of the Bitcoin blockchain. But since you and I have agreed to opt into this special set of rules, and really all you need is the person minting the coin, so to speak, and someone on the other side who's willing to sell the coin for actual Bitcoin. You've now got a market for colored coins.
That was also the genesis for a lot of the blockchain. Hey, I'm over here. That was the genesis for a lot of the blockchain use cases. That's where like the tokenization of syndicated loans came from. So Counterparty and the Color Coin project had its place. I think the only thing meaningful in air quotes that came of it were probably like rare Pepes. I think that's the only thing that we still. I can't think of another one. Yeah, but CryptoKitties,
It didn't have the same power like Rare Pepe does.
Oh, there were scammies too. That's a good point. Yeah, but scammies got dumped and there was a bad breakup. But but just for reference, that's where a lot of the like blockchain and TradFi stuff came from. Like there is a kernel of an idea there. It migrated to other blockchains. It still hasn't really gone anywhere. But then it did get reinvented with the concept of individual Satoshis representing art or an inscription or something like that.
Do you want to answer question 2, or because I've got something to add on the question 1?
I'll just wrap up the Coinbase inscription thing real quick. It's true in the Genesis block, Satoshi embedded the famous headline in the Times, January 3, 2009, China's on the brink of second bailouts for banks. I don't know, that is inscribing data into a block, but actually every single block has a Coinbase field. These days, miners tag it with their name. It's not, I don't want to muddle this conversation up too much. I don't think we can call it, it's inscribing data into a block, but it's not nearly in the same league. You can't trade that Coinbase field back and forth, for example. Yeah, and you don't have possession of it if you have
I have a question. With color coins.
Hi.
Hi. Can you use color coins for smart contracts? I think RGB or I think.
Yeah, actually, sure.
Right, I think so.
Oh wow, are we gonna do an RGB side?
Nice.
Is Maxime here?
It's a nice segue into.
Sure. If you. Okay, high level, if you and I decide to adopt a second set of rules on top of the Bitcoin blockchain that nobody else has to worry about or opt into, certainly we could have a colored coin between us that everyone else treats like a regular Bitcoin coin that you and I believe will obey the rules of a smart contract. There's a question about what the enforcement mechanism for what that smart contract is if only you and I are opting into it. It's the software that you and I choose to run. What does it mean if we're out of sync? It's not like there's a miner somewhere that's keeping us honest. It's just you and me at the end of the day. I'll say yes, you could build smart contracts on top of it. If you want to use that definition of smart contracts, I'm not sure why you wouldn't just use a website and you could call that website paypal.com and have your smart contracts through a nice little web UI. I'm not. Sorry?
I lack trust, so if I'm doing like
Okay, so there would. Got it. So, okay, so your trust model would be different. It wouldn't be the same as Bitcoin's trust model, where we're all kept honest by proof of work and following the longest chain. It would be whatever smart contract protocol that you and I opt into. I won't go into RGB in particular, but there's typically a set of validators that keep everyone else honest and make sure that all colored coins follow the rules of the meta protocol. And you end up having trust the validator set, and different sets of colored coin protocols have different trade-offs. Typically, they default to one of n honest operators, and as long as you trust one person in the set of initial validators as honest, then you have faith in the colored coin.
Okay. I'm sorry. Just
that was a rabbit hole. I'm sorry. I tried to.
1 minute nerd snipe. You to have Bitcoin, like what Bitcoin needs the blockchain for, and it's very related because it's kind of ultimate JPEG resistance is client-side validation. at the end of the day, you need Bitcoin, you need the blockchain for double spend protection, but you do not need other people to validate your transactions. You can have a system like Bitcoin that would be very different because of everything that's built around it, and it's questionable whether it could work like Bitcoin works today. But you do not need full nodes to validate other people's transactions. It can be just the validation can be just done by receivers, but you still need receivers to all agree on the same protocol for consensus rules to be effectively be using the same money. So if people are interested in this nerd snipe, there is a very good paper by Jonas Nick, the maintainer of Bitcoin Core's libsec P256K1, the cryptography library, and Robin Linus, the inventor of BitVM. They co-authored a paper called Shielded CSV, which extends upon the idea, the insight from Peter Todd from 2015 about client-side validation. Basically, it's RGB, but done right. So it's pretty interesting to think of an alternative model for Bitcoin. Well, because in this case, you don't store all your scripts, all your things to validate on chain. You keep it between the sender and the receiver. On chain, you only store nonces that are 64 bytes, not exactly nonces, but just 64 bytes commitment to this. So it's kind of ultimate JPEG resistance because you don't publish your scripts to everybody anymore. Anyways, back on track to your question about colored coins, I think it's interesting as well because in how data storage can actually be harmful to all Bitcoin users. Because if you think through it, all right, someone is going to store some data in the chain. So what's going to happen? They're going to bid against people that want to store a different type of data, which is Bitcoin payments. All right, so that can be seen and nefarious. If you cannot prevent it, what else are they going to do? Are they going to impose more resource usage on fully validating nodes? Not exactly, not at all, actually. Like, as Drew explained before, with upreturn and similarly with inscriptions, validating those scripts is actually less computation heavy, there is less resource usage in validating JPEGs than regular transactions. So it's not these concerns. But you can have a concerns that Bitcoin users start using Bitcoin for some sort of meta protocol, such as the counterparty ones, such as a colored coin. Let's say 50% of fees earned by miners are related to transactions that are part of what 50% of Bitcoin users are collectively hallucinating about meta protocol. In this case, miners have a very strong incentive to be following this meta protocol, and it increasingly becomes the definition of Bitcoin. And it's pretty concerning with regard to miner extracted value, because then, like the one property that creates the censorship resistance in Bitcoin is that anybody can become a miner, right? It's like, sure, it's a permissionless set. It doesn't mean that it's costless. It costs a lot of money to become a miner, but you do not need to require the permission from anyone. But if most of your revenues are going to come from alternative protocols that might or might not be permissioned, then you're creating a very strong mining centralization pressure, which we absolutely want to avoid. So in this sense, data storage could be an incentive, creating very, very perverse incentive that would be deserve most Bitcoin users. However, you can do this like with only very small amounts of data stored, like with counterparty, or at the extreme, without storing any data, as was shown by ordinals. You just collectively hallucinate that some satoshis that were created in some transactions are worth more than others. There's no way to prevent that. There's no way from preventing people from hallucinating. So, yeah, all this possible bad incentive created by JPEGs are not actually preventable and can be done much more efficiently without the JPEGs.
In which case, to like recontextualizing this, again, it comes down to people will look for arbitrary ways. To your point, there will hallucinations will emerge where folks try to use the Bitcoin blockchain for whether it's arbitrary data storage or other arbitrary uses that maybe were not initially anticipated by the creators, early contributors to Bitcoin.
To what extent, I'm over here. To what extent, though? So we talked about SegWit being, the real monumental move in this direction, and then Taproot to another extent. These are valid transactions. People pay fees for them, right? We kind of already rang this bell. And this is an open-ended question. Do you think that that was too fast? Do you think that we kind of just, this is the new normal and we have to deal with this? Is it an unwinding situation where, mistakes were made and we should revisit some of the assumptions behind SegWit and Taproot? Because at the end of the day, they're valid transactions, and if we're worried about, the tip validation, and we're worried about UTXO bloat and the resources that puts on individual, users that run their nodes and things like that, these were all things that were just put out there effectively, and people upgraded. So, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm going to turn your question into a question. Why are we talking about all this now? Taproot activated 4 years ago. Why is it suddenly relevant on a Thursday night in June?
I don't know about Taproot, but during SegWit, this was all talked about. This is why there's a 4 megabyte limit. That's why we have a limit. There's plenty of conversations where if we have spammers that are using the Windows discount, what happens? And if the chain's not being used for anything else, and it's just spammers using it, well, it's within the limit. We have a 4 megabyte limit. We can't exceed over it. That's why I don't understand that. It doesn't even make any sense to me. There's a limit. We fought for this limit. That was the block size war was about, was to keep a limit. We had an entire group of people that wanted to raise the limit to 32 megabytes, 8 megabytes, but we fought to have it at 1 with the weight. And sure, if there was real transactions happening, those transactions would be pricing out JPEGs. As simple as that. There's really nothing. If there was demand for on chains, then the JPEGs wouldn't be able to pay for those fees. Right now, just because, I don't think anyone that's taken 546 sats, right? That's the dust.
That's the dust limit.
546 sats. I don't think you're a positive user for the network. I don't care what you're doing with that 500. I don't care if you pay the miner fee. You are net negative. But there's nothing we could do about it. This is what Bitcoin is about. If there is a way to get a fee to the miner, and it's a valid transaction, it's going to get mined. There's nothing you or I can do about it. That's what Bitcoin was designed to do. That was the whole point of it. So, I don't know. It's not spam by definition.
All right. Well, no. It's not, well, that's subjective spam. By definition, if you're paying for a transaction, it's not spam. That's my point.
So,
it's not spam.
So why are we talking about this right now? Sego was activated 8 years ago, Taproot 4 years ago. Why is it suddenly very important to be discussing this right now? Hint, hint.
Because nobody wants to use Bitcoin. Nobody is interested in censorship resistance.
Why are you here tonight? Come on.
Well, so I think we have a last comment from the Jedi in the back.
Because there was a guy that figured out how to make people hallucinate into another program where they could separate sats and then making one sat represent something. It was new. And then it kind of faded, it dying out, and now it's it's going to die out like everything else died out, and we'll forget about this in a year. It'll be all forgotten.
But to your point, that I think the reason why we're here is the PTSD from that event.
Yes.
The PTSD from that event, and really when we're talking about the event, the PTSD from inscriptions and from ordinals and everything that came with that led to a very sensitive response to an email that I believe you had sent. Was it a month ago?
Yeah, a month and a half now, I think.
And so I guess, could you upstairs before we were talking about the conversation that led to you sending that email with a certain layer 2 developer? Could we say that? It's going to police me on the layer 2 usage right there.
Who got the email? What's going on? Give me. None of these people were upstairs for an hour and a half drinking with us. This is what I'm trying to get across to you
Actually,
guys.
I wasn't drinking.
We owe them background. Come
I had
on.
5 zins in just to try to keep up with every third sentence. But yeah, let's talk about the conversation in the email.
Okay, so the email to your reply to you is an email sent to the Bitcoin development mailing list. So how it came about is that I've been trying for the past year, I think, or let's say 6 months since I joined Chaincold Labs to try to catch up with all the developments that are happening in with application developers or like second layer type development, because I feel like as the Bitcoin industry is growing, we have a bit of a disconnect between people working on the Bitcoin protocol and people using it. And I think this example is a very good illustration of this disconnect that I've been trying to bridge the gap. I went to the MIT Bitcoin Expo in Boston and then later in Washington to UpNext. And at the MIT Bitcoin Expo, I met one of the founder of Citria, which is basically a side system without entering in the detail. You can see it like a side chain. Like we had Liquid, we had Rootstock. It has different trust assumptions for its users, but you can see it the same. And the way Citria works is that they have a bridge to send Bitcoin from into the side system, which is using BitVM, the system invented by Robin Linus, which gives us properties that are very close to that of getting covenants on Bitcoin, but not exactly the same trust assumptions. But we're getting very, very close with what we have today on Bitcoin consensus. And so it's the most advanced one in that they have actual concrete protocol and actual transactions on the test network to build. I think then there is Alpen that has some stuff on mainnet as well, testing on mainnet. But yeah, there is multiple companies working on implementing this BitVM stuff. So I was interested in, all right, you have all your zero-knowledge cryptography, whatever bullshit on top of it. What actual Bitcoin transactions are you using? Basically, I was trying to understand what are they paying for, to understand the incentive at the layer one. And it was the conversation with him kind of blew my mind and illustrated this disconnect that we have, because it just kept on giving. He was like, oh yeah, well, we have these very large transactions. And I was like, yeah, but these transactions are more than 100 KV bytes. How do you even broadcast them? Oh yeah, we just use Slipstream. I was like, what?
What's Slipstream?
Slipstream is a private submission API to Mara, which are miners. So instead of using the public peer-to-peer relay network for standalone transaction, they built a protocol on top of Slipstream. So it's not only one individual going to a miner being like, hey, I've got this non-standard transaction, can you guys just mine it for me? It's like a whole protocol that they built upon a private submission API to a miner. So it's not great in terms of, again, accessibility for new miners to enter the set of miners and compete on an equal footing for blocks. But yeah, it kept on giving. So then he was like, oh yeah, but this transaction has 1,000 dust output. I was like, what? And I was like, yeah, surely these outputs, you should be spending them somehow later on. And he was like, yeah, no, it's just zero value outputs. They are used as connectors in case we have a challenge, but we never really spend them. I was like, all right, we'll need to do something about it, because obviously they could use dust output because they're just sending a transaction to Slipstream, so they don't have to relate to. And then just the third point, then he was like, oh yeah, and then we have this second stage transaction. You can think of it like a penalty transaction in Lightning or justice transaction in Lightning. If someone cheats, you can always send a transaction on the base layer to get back your coins. They have the same kind of system in BitVM, and this system is time sensitive. In the same fundamental way as Lightning, you have someone putting a bid, and it can be challenged before a certain time has passed. Because it's time sensitive, for these specific transactions, not for the rest, but for these specific transactions, they tailored it to make it relay on the public peer-to-peer network, because that's where they have the highest guarantees that they can get timely confirmation and they are not relying on a single point of failure, such as the private API for submission. And because they had to tailor their transactions to the public network, they had to respect the Bitcoin Core standardness rules. The Bitcoin Core standardness rules are tighter rules than the Bitcoin consensus rules for a relay of $10 transactions on the network, transactions that are not yet included into blocks. And in doing so, they were limited in the up return output type that we discussed at the beginning is limiting data storage to 80 bytes. They needed 144. It's not a lot. Like JPEGs are megabytes or millions of bytes. This is just 144. That is never going to happen on chain. But even though it's never going to happen, they're relying on the possibility for it to happen, right? It's like lightning. You never want your penalty transaction to happen on chain. You just want to have the threat that is possible for it to happen to keep everyone honest. It's the same thing in their case. So that's why they tailored their transaction to, in addition to the 80 bytes in the up return, they're using fake public keys in other outputs. And they're storing data in these fake public keys. And full nodes on the network for these fake public keys will have to store this output forever. These public keys, because they're fake, they will never be spendable. So the size of the UTXO set is always going to be up when you use forever unspendable outputs. I'm not very concerned, so I was not concerned by their usage because, again, it was kind of a challenge kind of thing. It's like the penalty transaction. It's never going to happen because the bid that you put for your challenge, it's like everybody is incentivized to act honestly. But it was like a strong signal for Bitcoin Core is setting very, very poor incentives for users of Bitcoin. And so we need to fix it. So I sent an email to the mailing list saying, hey, we have this up return limits. It's for historical reason, for no good technical reason. This standardness limit, in addition to Bitcoin's rules, in addition to Bitcoin's consensus rules, we should just match what Bitcoin consensus rules are instead of having additional Bitcoin Core specific rules on this output type, because people that want to use our public relay are actually doing, it pushes them to do more harmful stuff. So we should remove this bad incentive. So that's why I sent the email to mailing list, which was then weaponized by people on Twitter.
And the email, again, was effectively to remove that arbitrary up return limit that was not congruent with Bitcoin, the protocol, and Bitcoin's consensus rules.
Yes.
I have a question. Oh, sorry. Go.
No, jump in, Hodl. Go for it.
This is American HODL, ladies and gentlemen.
If in a perfect world, if mining was decentralized and Bitmain wasn't subsidizing all these pools, I could understand, like, you don't want a centralized force, like, basically having one pool getting all the transactions and the smaller pools wouldn't be seeing those transactions. I get that part. But we're in a world where Bitmain is subsidizing everything. They're giving the block reward. It's F2PPL. The miners are going to get paid regardless. Slipstream isn't censorship resistant. It's only one pool has it. It's only Mara. We've had transaction accelerators forever. I mean, via BTC, you were able to go straight to them. So they were given, I think, like the first fries free. So while I agree with you, we should be as close to consensus as Bitcoin as possible, like right as close to Bitcoin as possible. But like removing that was starting drama, probably for unnecessary drama. So like it's gonna happen regardless. Like if they want, what was this company that was Citria? If Citria wants, they'll go to Slipstream, and then if it's profitable, they could go to F2 pool without broadcasting anything. Without like they don't even if they, but like they could. So like while I appreciate it, I still believe that you did the right move. Like I think it should but I also think it started unnecessary. I like the drama. It's fun. It's entertaining. But like it's
okay.
Hang on. Let me pump the brakes because I feel like this is interesting now to exactly 5 people in the room and 4 of them have been at my house for a barbecue.
But I want to answer this.
For the rest of you, are you following along with like the initial conversation and what happened? Raise your hand if you know what Slipstream is, either in theory or like actually. Okay, so everybody gets the idea. They take money directly. They're miners who will let you submit transactions to them directly and publish your transactions into the blockchain without having to flood it to the rest of the network, right? All right. Yeah. Yep. All right, and Antoine talked about all the different things that Citria wants to do that, in terms of non-standard transactions. There's there's the transactions they're saying the slipstream. There's the 1,000 empty dust outputs. There's
basically it's the same. They have non-time sensitive transactions that they do regularly, run transactions, and they have time sensitive transactions. For the non-time sensitive transactions, they just submit them to Slipstream and other miners with whom they have agreements. For the time sensitive ones, they try to use the public relay network as much as possible. Yeah, they don't honor the dust limit.
If there's incentive to do so, nothing's preventing.
yeah, guessing not. It's policy, so they don't have to. So if there's profit in them ignoring it, they will. All right, so
yeah, no, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
They have incentives to not respect it, and they don't.
So I want to back up to something you said right at the end, which is. I want to back up to something you said right at the end of the explanation for that, before you fired off the email, where you said when you were drafting it, you realized that these limits existed for no good, just historical reasons, and they're not being respected in practice. And the argument is then to get rid of them. Dig into that more. Why isn't the argument to tighten them and make it even harder for Citria or whoever to?
Well, I don't think we should think of Citria as an enemy to start.
Just
as like
Citria's a straw man. Anyone who's
like to prevent JPEGers, you mean? Like,
yeah, I'm trying to steel man the argument here because there's two. It seems to me there's two schools of thought. There's, do you want the rules to reflect reality? Or
yeah,
do you want
go ahead, steel man it, and I try to. I'll rebut it.
Okay, I don't like JPEGs on the blockchain. Everyone should obey the rules. These are the rules. These are the rules the way they've always been. And if you want to relax them, that's bad.
To take it a step further, Bitcoin should fundamentally be a dumb money protocol. These JPEGers are doing things outside of money that are haram, and as a result, we should be the Bitcoin Core contributors should be doing everything we can to keep Bitcoin halal.
Yeah. So
I disagree. I think that these are valid transactions.
But we're just steel manning.
I understand.
Yeah.
And I'm going to disagree with the steelman. Isn't that the point of the steelman? Look, they're valid transactions that go
it's
through.
his bar. I got nothing.
Can someone kick that guy out?
It's a continuation of the question that I had before, because it gets to a point and it puts Bitcoin Core developers in a precarious position. And, I definitely appreciate all the work that you do on Bitcoin Core. Arbdown, you are also an engineer that works on this stuff, and then there's also Drew up there. But we have a situation where there's implications on the industry. There are implications on the industry. So at what point are we actually looking at business models? Business models attacking Bitcoin, I think has always been a really good thing. Bitcoin should be attacked relentlessly. You could disagree with that. There is a viewpoint where that hardens the protocol and it makes it better, faster, stronger.
Yeah, it's a common viewpoint. I think it's wrong.
All right.
Well, we can't be too gentle with it. We have to beat it up if we're going to beat the big boys. Look, if there are business implications embedded in the decisions that the developers and engineers are making and the community at large, how do we even create a mental rubric to approach those trade-offs?
I want to ask that question, but phrase it slightly differently.
Yeah, please.
What's the difference between Citria and Satoshi Dice? 12 years ago, because Satoshi Dice.
So I think that's really fair because this conversation in particular, for people that don't know, this bled into the difference between Bitcoin Core and Bitcoin Knots is one individual developer's view of what are good transactions and bad transactions, and a lot of that had to do with his own personal background and his beliefs as an individual. So that's okay, and I think Bitcoin has dealt with knots for a really long time, but when we're talking about core, the stakes are slightly different, I think.
I think the difference between Satoshi Dice and Citria was that Satoshi Dice got priced out. That was it. And Citria eventually will get priced out as well. That's the goal.
But
No, I'm not,
Citria
no.
does not spam the chain. Citria is like, they don't spam the chain. They don't care. Like
They're not going to get priced out. They'll just go bankrupt because no one's going to give a shit about any of this stuff. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah, well, that's just your opinion, man. It's like, no, it's like, maybe you can think that this BitVM side system stuff isn't interesting. I don't have a strong opinion. I'm like open kind of to like, all right, you guys are trying to do cool stuff, maybe scaling Bitcoin, let's see. But I guess the steelman for your case would be more against JPEGers, because JPEGers are using the chain for what it was not intended to be used for. It's obvious, and they will be priced out. So yeah, the difference between Satoshi Shida and JPEGers today is that today blocks are larger, and the number of users, of actual users of the chain, is smaller. It's like nobody cares about using Bitcoin on-chain transactions. It's for free. Block space is free. So if it's free, someone is just going to put garbage in there. It's free and permissionless.
All right, I think that was enough of a. We went full circle. So tell us about this email. I cut you off like right before you actually talked about what was in it. We've established that you like talked to Citria, you sent an email out to the list, and what happened next?
There's two responses that I think could be interesting. Should I skip
jump
them
in that
or
first? Unless it's hot.
The first of them is we should attack Bitcoin today to harden it. I think it's very wrong because Bitcoin is much weaker than people think. I think by and large today, Bitcoin relies on voluntary good behavior. Compact block is one of them. It's like people respecting the protocol to relay blocks in a very efficient manner is completely good behavior. It's in the interest of large miners to not respect this protocol, yet they do. It's the interest of large miners to exploit selfish mining, yet they don't. It's we have had vulnerabilities in the implementation, the most used implementation in the network that were pretty bad, could knock off the network entirely or large parts of the network. They were never exploited. So, yeah, I think Bitcoin is strong in aligning incentives and stuff, and this way it's interesting, but we should not overstate its strength. And I think it's by and large, it's succeeding by people acting against their incentive to strengthen it.
But is it really acting against their incentive if they're Bitcoin holders?
Yeah, not necessarily. Not necessarily. So
I'll be like, yeah, someone that's ROIing on their machines as fast as possible, I could see that. But if you have miners out there that want to stack Bitcoin and it's not in their incentive to attack the network, even if they could.
Which related to this exact point, Mara of all the miners is the one who's most aggressively trying to increase their Bitcoin holdings by issuing securities just to buy more Bitcoin. So we're to the point, if holding Bitcoin is sort of the way to align incentives, then at least certainly a lot of the PubCo miners are.
Yeah, that's
okay. So that was the first point I wanted to address. Then the second point was. Starting this was completely unnecessary drama, and if we think about it from a resource allocation point of view, was not a good choice. So it's a view I held for up to 1 month within the drama, and then I stopped believing that. I think that because Bitcoin is such a specific system that is defined by a consensus of its users, it's very vulnerable to misinformation among its users. And I think that this clearly nothing burger of the operator standardness limit unveiled something that was already there and needed to be addressed. And you need better address it as soon as possible. And so yeah, that's why I think I didn't do it on purpose. It was like I just sent the email because it's like the 3 bad things that Citria was doing at the beginning. I was like, all right, in my own echo chamber of like, yeah, obviously everyone is going to agree with me, It's like they're doing three bad things. It's like the very large transactions, the dust outputs, and then the fake PubKey in the challenge transactions. The least bad of them is the fake PubKey in the challenge transaction. But it's also the easiest to fix. It's just bad incentive put in place by Bitcoin Core for no reason at all. So I just sent an email. I was like, all right, let's get this out of the way, and then we can tackle the actual important things. Then it created the drama. And then I was pretty dismissive of the drama. And then it actually got a lot of normally reasonable people concerned. I was like, all right, I'm going to address the concerns of like people I think are reasonable. And yeah, I think it was overall probably a net positive to go through this at this point rather than in the future.
And also, just to summarize that drama, for those of you who don't constantly have Twitter open every waking hour.
Terminally online.
Terminally.
I see 3 people with Twitter open right now in front of me.
Yeah. So effectively, what happened is we'll call many of the halal Bitcoiners decided that this was basically Bitcoin Core being co-opted by the JPEGers, and that this is Bitcoin Core being in cahoots and basically saying that the centralization of the Bitcoin Core maintainers and the Bitcoin Core developers is proving to be a risk here because they're directly enabling more folks to spam the network with non-monetary transactions. It was effectively what the response was that has led to sort of all this drama, which brings us here today. Now, I think you've done a very good job of outlining the fact that, specifically say within this case, one, this is really just solving kind of a different problem, a simpler problem. Two, bringing Bitcoin Core closer to the sort of pure Bitcoin, the platonic form of Bitcoin consensus rules. But then also, I think 3, as you kind of highlight, folks are going to be doing a lot of these non-monetary transactions anyway, and so you might as well try to make it, have it so that they do it in the least bad way possible.
Question. What's next? Are we removing the dust limit? There's something next. There's got to be something next. There's a lot of things to remove.
I think one concerning issue right now is the incentive to use large transactions by this BitVM stuff. What the BitVM application are doing is that they're using very, very large scripts for their very roughly implemented zero-knowledge proofs. These transactions, being very large, are often not standard. And if there is large demand on the large Bitcoin demand for very large transactions, I'm assuming Bitcoin Core has an additional limit on the size of transactions compared to the Bitcoin rule. The Bitcoin rule is the size of a block. There is no explicit limit on the size of transactions. It's just whatever is going to fit in the block. And Bitcoin Core, in addition, is only going to relay and include into block templates transactions that are no larger than 100K VBytes. If there's going to be large demand, Bitcoin demand for these large transactions, then Bitcoin Core will have to adapt. However, it's very non-obvious, but it could create pretty bad incentive. It's because the size of transactions is very important in the ability to be able to create block templates that it should be a very small fraction. The maximum size of a transaction should be a small fraction of the size of a block. It's not the case by Bitcoin's consensus rules. And the way that we have a lot of DOS protections today on the network and a lot of miner accessibility to mining is by the effect of like the current demand for block space is only small transactions. If large transactions come to be a thing with actual demand behind it, I don't know what we have to do, but we might have to soft fork them out, which might piss off a lot of people. So yeah, if you want a next thing, that's actual drama right there. There is an interesting discussion on delving Bitcoin. There is a thread that was started recently. It was discussed among people I know that were working on this stuff for a while. but never publicly, and it was discussed publicly recently on Delving Bitcoin. And notably, Peter Waller has a comment on this post that explained the issue very clearly in a very Peter Waller fashion. It's very clear how it can create bad incentives and what we might want to do about it. But the issue is that if you do that in the face of actual economic demand for these transactions, it's going to be ugly.
Any questions? I have a tangent question before I do that.
Good. We're talking about, especially this PTSD thing from 2017, and an outcome of that was, at least I believed, and I'm kind of not believing that so far now, is that there is this segregation or separation between relaying nodes versus mining nodes. But the ultimate question is, I think that everyone is asking here, is there any way to prevent out-of-band transactions? Protocol level, soft fork, hard fork, is there this real distinction between relaying transaction node operators, node runners, versus a mining node?
I think if you go...
it's a steel man, straw man at the same time.
I understand. I think it comes down to a very fundamental issue. I don't think it's possible, but I think if you are going to try to make invalid transactions that are submitted out of band, you're necessarily going to have to try to introduce an identity mechanism for relay nodes, or having them do a proof of work, which is similar. So you're going to need to prove that it went through some relays, and then you're going to need identity. And if you need identity, it's not a permissionless system anymore.
But do you need relaying nodes to have mining nodes? Like, is that
Oh yeah. So,
a real thing?
oh yeah. Well, that's the argument. Maybe not, but okay.
Like miners, my understanding is nodes present transactions to a miner. All their job is to order them, confirm them, and fucking go home.
Yeah, I think it's a very good question, and I'm going to rephrase it because it's. Sorry, I got a beer delivered, so it got me confused. I must say, thank you. Yeah, it's a valid beer. It got relayed.
Spam beer.
Yes. So the argument is that if you do away with the public peer-to-peer relay network, the question is, do we need a peer-to-peer relay network at all? It's like miners are incentivized to hear about fee-paying transactions. Transactions that are paying fees are incentivized to go to miners with hash rates. Can we have an entirely private market out of this? Some people believe so. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but some people involved in Bitcoin developments believe so, and you can find some sources online. But the thing with the public relay of unconfirmed transaction is that any miner that wants to enter the mining business have access to 99% or 100% of the fees paid for the next block, always. Whereas otherwise, it creates a large entry cost to entering the mining business, because if you don't have all those fees and they're all going to existing miners, all these miners have an edge on an entrance on the market. It creates a larger entry cost, which does not mean it makes it permissioned, but it does mean that it makes it, in effect, much harder to enter the mining market. And entering the mining market is what makes Bitcoin censorship resistant. So as long as we can, it's very important that we keep this property of having public relay of unconfirmed transactions accessible to anybody without any identity or permission.
But the public relay isn't going to go anywhere anyway. Even if there is private, like, mempools out there, the only way to get your transaction to be seen by every single hash power on the network is through our mempools, right? Like, there's no other way to do it. It's the only thing that we have that's actually permissionless. So, sure, if...
Yeah, but that's a farce, is what my argument is. It's a farce unless it's
Yeah, it's a current equilibrium. You could say there is an equilibrium together that, I'm a miner, I'm a mining pool, I want to hear about fees, I go to the public relay. I'm a transactor, I want to broadcast transaction, I go to the public relay. Maybe we could move away from this equilibrium in another, which could be private submission.
I mean, how
with
many pools enforce rootstock right now? All of them?
What?
Rootstock.
I have no idea.
I think
it has some.
But I'm pretty sure Rootstock has. They made a deal with, especially in the beginning, with a few pools that would mine their transaction.
They'll merge mining the headers. Yeah.
Yeah, and all the other pools weren't. Right? We've seen this play out. We've seen.
Yeah. Well, if your point is that, but the bad incentives can always appear. Yeah, merge mining is terrible incentives. Yes.
But this stuff always existed. That's what I'm saying. It's nothing new.
Yeah, but it's like 99%.
All right, you two can start up a signal chat together. Come on, everyone else get in. So who has questions? All right, let's go over here.
You said earlier that there was no incentive on migrating to op return, and I was just curious if there is any difference in the efficiency of the data when it's pretending to be a signature versus
pretending to be a public key. Yes, there is. I just didn't want to overstate my case.
I figured it was
but there is. Because when you're trying to fake your data as a public key, you're going to need extraneous bytes to fake it as a public key, so it's going to be couple extra bytes. In the case of Citria, however, they use multiple outputs. So it's a couple dozen bytes in addition that they would not have to be storing if they were using a single op return instead. But it's marginal. It's not what is going to push them to use it. It's just that they want to be nice.
Actually, at the risk of causing further unnecessary drama, one question. I feel like we're doing a lot of talking about the mempool right now. I believe there was a blog post in the last year, basically proposing whether the mempool could be done away with altogether, and I feel like you were sort of touching on that a little bit with some of these private, basically mempools. Do you see anything like that happening, or what are your thoughts on sort of doing away with the idea of sort of a centralized mempool?
Yeah, well, if we start filtering stuff, and that's the highway to doing away with the mempool, right? It's make the mempool useless for actual transactions with economic demand, and people are just going to bypass it. So I think it's possible. I think it's severely undesirable. And that's what I was going to refer to when I was replying to Mr. Huddle, which is, in effect, all the 99% of the fees paid to miner goes through the public network today. It could be otherwise. It's absolutely possible that it could be otherwise, but it's not the case, and we should try to sustain this equilibrium for as long as we can, I think.
I think his name's actually American Huddle, but yes.
I think this is the first time during this entire talk that we've mentioned the word filtering. It's never actually, we mentioned drama in reference to the email that you sent, but why don't we talk a little bit more about the responses, both less social and more technical, to your proposal? How does filtering come into this discussion at all?
Filtering was involved in the discussion because Bitcoin Core in 2023, in reply to the heavy use of inscriptions on the Bitcoin network, there was some demand from a small group of users that Bitcoin Core prevent relaying transactions that had JPEGs in them, basically. And Bitcoin Core's reply was if this use case didn't exist before, maybe tighter standardized rules would have prevented it from being bootstrapped in the first place. But now that it's here and it's paying fees, the only thing that Bitcoin Core trying to prevent this transaction from being relayed is going to do is not going to change Bitcoin. It's going to just make Bitcoin Core obsolete, and people are going to use something else, whether it is private subscription to miner or alternative relay network. Because we talk about the relay network as if there was only one possible. There can be as many peer-to-peer relay networks as we want. It's like back in the days we used to tell to people there is no the mempool. There is as many mempool as there is nodes, which is true, and it's the same for relay networks. And miners are just going to plug to peer-to-peer relay networks that they're incentivized to, and it just so happens to be the case that the Bitcoin Core rules were congruent with what the Bitcoin economic demand was. But Bitcoin Core has to adapt to Bitcoin, not the other way around. And so that was the discussion back in 2023. And to reply to your initial question, me saying that I should just also remove the operator limit because it's creating bad incentives and only here for historical reason and no good technical reason, we created this demand from people that were told no in 2023, like we're not going to make Bitcoin Core worse off by being like, oh, not only you don't want to tighten the rules, but you're loosening in them. So they got mad. And this time around, some of them were very well prepared with a whole bag of analogies. It's like a lot of analogies and a lot of podcasting, and I think they actually managed to worry a lot of normal users of Bitcoin that don't really care. They're like, yeah, whatever. It's like not the extremist. I think it took really big proportion by being like you had the core extremists that are like don't believe in economic incentive, believe Bitcoin is run by something else than economic incentive, and then it rippled out to other group of people that started to be concerned, and that's why I started being involved as well to reply to the concerns, which I think were unfounded, and I think that's how the drama started. I think it was in large part overblown and manufactured by people from this core small group of people that believe that Bitcoin Core did not make the right decision in 2023. And note that I'm trying to not be dismissive of them. It's just they just disagree, but then they disagreed in 2023, and now in 2025, they not only disagreed, but they tried to manufacture an attack on Bitcoin Core contributors, which was probably ineffective and not great. It's like again, yeah, it's like
he was telling us upstairs that he has lots of rocks. Lots of rocks. No, I could. The man attested to owning no JPEGs himself.
Sorry?
You don't. You said upstairs you don't own any JPEGs. Not to dox your NFT
rocks or
bags.
JPEGs. Okay, I didn't catch that.
The rocks are the
I don't have
JPEGs.
JPEGs. I have JPEGs on my phone, but not on the Bitcoin blockchain.
I guess maybe one natural question as we think about coming up to time here is how do you think this debate will impact future soft forks, which we've had a previous meetup discussing this, unless Arbdao, you want to take another direction?
I don't know if, I don't want to do it. We've had the software discussion. Everybody wants to talk about soft forks. Everybody wants to fight about consensus.
But we have to have a hard fork at some point.
I swear to God,
years.
Tommy, I swear to God, I don't care if it's your bar.
That's not how I approach this. And correct me if I'm wrong, but we do have to have one at some point. And we may have to have...
Yeah.
Huh?
In 8 years from now, yes.
Sure, and we may have to have an emergency one. How does this experience over the last, couple of weeks, couple of months shape your perspective, huh?
Did you say a hard fork in 8 years?
80.
Yeah. Yeah, so at some point, this is for our kids and our kids' kids.
Quick hard fork in 8 years and back.
That's right around the corner when we're talking about Bitcoin. So, how does this experience shape your perspective on things that went right, things that could go better? Are we ever going to get to the point? Let's even think about emergencies. Let's say we have a Chinese deep sea quantum emergency.
Quantum would be a soft fork, but it would be a fork nonetheless.
Sure.
I think that people are lending too much. How would you say, emotional credibility to the term soft in soft fork, a soft fork is still a fork. It's still a change of Bitcoin's rules, and you can do anything with a soft fork. You can censor transactions. You can inflate the supply. You can do anything with a soft fork. So it's soft in the way that it's much more realistic to actually deploy on the network. It's like a hard fork would be technically pretty unrealistic to actually deploy. But a soft fork could be bad. In reply to your point about a necessary hard fork, yes, in 80 years we will have, like, in 80 years, it's like, English is harder than Bitcoin. In 80 years, we will have to, like, Bitcoin will stop functioning. The timestamp field, we have a time in block headers in Bitcoin blocks, and this time is limited in space, and as the time goes on, it's using more and more space, and when it's going to run out of space, all full nodes of the current Bitcoin core version are going to reject blocks. So it makes the hard fork a bit safer in that there cannot be a split. So we have to fix this issue, but if we fix it 50 years in advance, I think it's reasonable to do a hard fork. And with regard to the recent drama and my perspective on hard fork and soft fork, I don't think too much about the perspective on consensus changes to Bitcoin, but it definitely made me, it's like you always try to draw lessons. Sometimes you extrapolate too much, but sometimes it's right. So I guess one thing I extrapolated from this drama is that a lot of the Bitcoin community became complacent after the block size debates of 2017, and that we've won. Bitcoin is just something we are granted. It's like, I think we should not take Bitcoin for granted. It's not going to happen. It's not. I don't know how to say it in English, but it's not necessarily going to happen. So I think we need to work to preserve it, to make it better, to make it more robust, to strengthen it, even if I don't think it's the way to strengthen it, to attack it necessarily. I think thinking about attacks, and some people in the room have been finding attacks on the Bitcoin Core software, for instance, if people are interested to chat after. I think it's a very good way to strengthen Bitcoin for the long term. However, a large part of the strength of Bitcoin comes from its community. And what we have seen in the past 2 months is like an utter lack of critical thinking from the Bitcoin community. It's like a large part of people, because, all right, I think before I was not dismissive. Now I'm going to actually, I'll just give my personal opinion. I think that in the way that we've been toxic of people that are trying to steer some clueless users towards shitcoins or things that are actual scams and that are actually harmful to people, we should be toxic against them and we should call them out. They're scammers. In the same way, people that are trying to steer users out of something that is beneficial to them, such as running Bitcoin Core instead of a random executable that is not reviewed by anybody, they're in the same way harming clueless users. And in the same way, we should be toxic against them and we should call them out, and they are scammers. I think we should also call out people that even without being scammers themselves, just were gullible enough to listen to one podcast and believe fucking retarded attacks against Bitcoin Core that has been maintaining the Bitcoin network for the past 15 years. It's like Bitcoin would not exist if not for Bitcoin Core, right? Every single transaction, every single blocks out there has been through one or most likely many Bitcoin Core nodes. Every single transaction that was used to buy drugs, that was used to buy weapons, that was used to gamble, that was illegal, was mined by a Bitcoin Core node. The Bitcoin Core developers make it possible. And just taking for granted attacks against these developers, that you should just, like, the basic position should be fuck off unless you have actual tangible evidence of your claims. And the basic position of a large part of the community was, oh yeah, give me the conspiracy theories, more. It's like, it's not how we win. It's not how we win as a community. That's not how Bitcoin succeed. I think for Bitcoin to succeed, the community should have critical thinking. We should be skeptical of wild claims, and should be supportive of efforts to make Bitcoin succeed.
Man, I really wanted to end this on fuck off. That was such a strong note. Does anyone have any questions?
I was curious, based off our conversation today, how this relates to like OpCat and other forms of L2 development on Bitcoin, and like people deciding what other kind of soft forks are needed.
To be honest with you, most people I know that are interested in OpCat are not interested in JPEGs at all. But some people have designed schemes to enforce some meta protocol to exchange JPEGs in consensus with OpCat, which could be concerning. It's like a mixed bag. And the cat is not out of it yet.
All right. Anyone else?
Do we know what the activation, whatever this next soft fork is, how we're activating it? Is it like BIP 8, BIP 9?
Speedy trial.
Which version of BIP 8?
Are we doing speedy trial? Are we doing user activated fork?
I think the activation should be the most boring part of a soft fork, because in the activation you are just having minor signal readiness for the activation of a soft fork that users have already opted into. If users haven't already opted into, it means that miners are voting. It's not the case. Miners do not control Bitcoin's consensus rules, users do. However, some forced signaling things that happened in the past, I'm not too supportive of. For people that don't know, initially, Bitcoin Core activated soft forks using a mechanism called issue per majority. For instance, P2SH, BIP34, P2SH was activated with flag day, but BIP34 and later soft forks were activated with issue per majority. And when you activate this soft fork, past 95% of the threshold of miners signaling, the nodes are going to reject blocks of miners that do not signal. It means that, in effect, the 5% of miners that are not quick enough to upgrade before the others, there is always going to be 5% of laggard, unless everybody activates on the very same block. It's like start signaling on the very same block. They are going to see their blocks be rejected. And I think it's very important for Bitcoin nodes to make it so miners don't have their blocks rejected. Therefore, I'm in favor of BIP 9 activation, a BIP 9 activation, or maybe a BIP 8 with lock-in on timeout equal false. No forced activation unless it's necessary. If it's proven necessary, then it's necessary and we have to do it. But by default, we should just activate our soft fork on nodes, have miners signal for readiness, but not invalidate miners' blocks for no fucking reason.
Well, there was a reason for that in 2017.
Yeah, there was reason. But it's not necessary. Unless it's truly necessary, I think we should try to go the happy path. It's like a lightning channel.
This is a great day to talk about this. America's two dads are fighting, which is really uncomfortable. And we talk about like an emergency hard fork, and I think about pork getting like stuffed in at the last minute. And we talk about speedy trial, and I think about the 24-hour period to approve the bill that nobody can read. And it makes me uncomfortable. I hope that we can pull this back and go slow. But you know, I'll let you guys close this up. But thank you very much for this.
All right, going once, going twice, going three times. Any last questions? All right. Thank you, Antoine, and thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight. Appreciate you all.
Woo! Thanks for having me.
All right, some coming events. We have Peter McCormick coming in on Wednesday. Next Wednesday, Peter's going to be here. Everybody loves Peter. He doesn't really do Bitcoin stuff anymore, but he's still a good guy. And then later in the month, we have HRF on June 27th, which is a Friday. We're going to deviate from the script. It's not announced yet. I promise it's worth it. just keep a lookout for our Luma and Meetup page. Like and subscribe. Tip your bartenders, all that stuff. Thank you very much for being here.